Fantastic. Hi all. Andrew Smith, I'm Investment Director at GSA. We are currently active in 4 European student housing markets, being Spain, Germany, Ireland and the UK. We also have operations in Australia, Japan, China and Dubai.
Great, thank you. Jorick.
Yeah, welcome. My name is Jorick Beijer. I'm Foundation Manager at the Class of 2020, which is the European leading think tank on student living. We do research, we organize events, and we do advisory service for cities and universities. And we're a partner-based foundation with 70 partners, both from the real estate world, as cities, as universities, all across Europe.
Great, right.
Your phone. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mariya Federova. I'm the International Expansion Manager for Uniplaces. Uniplaces is a marketplace based right now in 5 countries, which is UK, Spain, Lisbon, where is our operational headquarters, Germany and Italy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nonnengässer. I'm with MPC. 4 years ago, we started initiating a student housing micro-living platform for Germany, which we have rolled out to Portugal and Spain in the meantime, and we currently have some 1,500 beds under the brand Stay 2 in various stages of delivery to the market in these countries.
Yes, hello, Dirk Rodewoldt, partner in CMS. CMS is a network of international law firms with more than 4,000 lawyers globally and 1,000 partners. And I'm a member of the real estate department and could assist some of the investors and operators in their acquisitions of student accommodation.
Great, thank you. You can introduce yourself, Frank. Why not? Yes, let's do it.
Hey, Richard. My name is Frank Koefen. Indeed, I think it was 6 years ago that we founded the Class of 2020 because a few of us, including Nonnengässer, were trying to pioneer a new investment. I was doing that on behalf of the student hotel, and I think this is a sign with such a full house here, how fast the sector is growing and establishing, and I think we'll find out more why that is and in which shape. So.
Yeah, no, great. And also just a special thank you to you, Andrew, as well, because Felix Bauer was going to be here, but he unfortunately is ill, so I've grown a beard in order to replace him here so that we've got the correct number of beards on the panel. But Andrew has agreed to step in at short notice, so appreciate that. Thanks very much. And as a way of thank you, I'm going to ask you the first question, Andrew, which is, you're active obviously in a lot of markets, not just, as we've heard, not just in Europe. What's driving the rise in student housing investments, and where do you think we are now in the current market?
I think the biggest driver of student housing at the moment is the 2 things. One is that the student numbers across the world, as Samuel went into, are growing. Middle class people across the world want to improve their lives through education, and that's driving increase in student numbers. The other big thing is urbanization, and you're seeing tight residential markets in most of the cities where the top universities are. So having a proper PBSA market allows the traditional housing stock to be used for pure residential, and having purpose-built student accommodation is a big plus for most towns, and it creates it's great income streams for investors.
Okay, good. And are there differences in terms of speed in the markets? I mean, interesting to pick up some of Samuel's data there. Are you seeing that from your investment as well, different speeds within these markets?
Every market is entirely different. I mean, one thing that GSA is very focused upon is having a local team in every market, because no 2 markets are the same. One of my favourite facts in terms of speed, it may not be what you're thinking of, but in our German portfolio, the average contact time for a booking is about half an hour. In our Spanish portfolio, it's about 9 hours. So you actually see students and their families coming to see the building before they'll book, literally tasting the food. Whereas in Germany or in the UK, people, contact time is on the website, maybe 1 phone call, and that's it. So the real estate markets are different, and the booking speeds are different as well.
Okay, interesting. And Mariya, is that what you're seeing as well in terms of, different pickup, different speeds of reaction in the different countries? that you're operating in?
Yeah, so there are different market dynamics, and we do see also like big professional key accounts here in Germany. That is not the case, for example, in South Europe. There's different booking behavior from the students, and also like who is booking. So international students tend to book more in the northern countries than in South Europe, for example. And by the way, I advise here right now this beautiful booklet you find with my fabulous colleagues. So grab one. There's more data for you.
Okay, good. I want to dig a little bit into some of the trends, Jorick. What are you seeing as the main kind of trends that you're picking up as the foundation that's particularly looking at student housing? And then I'll maybe pick up on also with you, Rainer, after that on micro-living. And from you, Jorick, as well, the trends that you're seeing in student housing and maybe how those are translating perhaps into micro-living. That would be interesting to pick up.
No problem. I think when we in particular looked into student housing, I think two of the key things we see is that branding is becoming increasingly important. So students really want to go for a brand. Their student life has to be an experience. So they go for operators with a clear vision, with a clear product. That's one. I think the second thing is also that the whole packaging around student housing is now changing in continental Europe quite quick. And so where the UK has always been ahead in providing residence life services, on the side of joy and entertainment, but also on mental aid, we also now see that coming into continental Europe. And then, of course, also and that's maybe a bridge to Rainer, the very concept of learning and working is changing quite rapidly due to digitalization, for example. So we see also that residences and student operators are also providing co-working schemes, facilities to start entrepreneurship, incubators, and so the whole definition of student housing, so to say, is broadening up.
I couldn't agree more. I think name tag student accommodation is becoming way too dense now. The borderline between the requirements of a student, of a young professional, of a entrepreneurial spirit, of a commuter are more or less diminishing. And if you go to the other end of the segment, hospitality, the big brands like Hilton and Starwood are currently all picking up their brains on how to cope with these trends. WeWork is thinking about going into the apartment business. So I think in 5 years from now, we will no longer talk about student housing or about co-living. It will be a kind of a patchwork which facilitates the needs of young people, which is on the one hand communal spaces, interaction, it's digitalization, it's urbanization, and those who still feel to ignore these trends will be on the losing end of this development over the next years. Yeah.
Okay. Pick that up, Frank.
But Rainer, I mean, obviously the world is turning around fast now, but do you, when you meet with your financial partners, your investors, 4 years ago they came here for the first time to understand student housing, and now you're telling them already that that's over as well. How do you explain it, and how do you package that for a financial institution acceptable investment?
It has a strong missionary element. I'm doing this now for close to 10 years, and I do remember, Andrew, 5 years ago I tried to convince you to invest in Germany, which you could have done at way lower prices, but you decided
I don't remember this.
To join last year. Yeah? And in principle, it's the same in other European markets. Yeah? So I think for a year, we have been looking for investors to join us in Portugal. Yeah? Now everybody's looking into Portugal. Yeah, I've been talking to a owner of a piece of land in Valencia last week, and he said to me, 3 years, no one was interested in my plot. Now I received 20 offers in the last 6 weeks. Yeah, and this is the situation. And finally, those who want to run with the tribe will not succeed. And it's absolutely fair to say, Frank, it is a challenge to find the right investors' profiles who want to be the first movers in segments and markets. Yeah, but if you go out today and try to find someone for student accommodation in Serbia or Croatia, not an easy pick.
I think it's probably worth adding that student housing is real estate, but it's operational real estate. So the key thing to deliver what you've just been talking about is having the right operational team on the ground and being able to build your buildings in a way that's flexible enough to go with some of the trends. You know, the trend of sleeping in a bedroom isn't going to go away over the next 100 years. I'm forecasting, but you know, whether it's co-living, or whether it's greater communal space, communal kitchens that you mentioned earlier. Having that sort of space is great, and having a team who can deliver it is the vital thing for all of our investors to want to do it. It is really operational real estate.
Did you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I think student housing and micro-living looks very similar from the outside, but in fact, if you go into the details, I think there's still a difference in terms of locations to be preferred, in terms of the standard to be realized, distances to universities and others. So I think it cannot be mixed up. I fully agree that there will be a development towards such type of living, but in fact, student housing and micro-living will be different.
Okay, good.
Is that also in the legal sense a relevant difference? Do you notice that? Because there's in the planning code, and I was also thinking about some of the discussions you see across Europe in cities with a lot of pressure on the market.
So unfortunately on legal issues I can only comment on Germany because I'm not familiar with the situations in other countries. But indeed, the legal framework is initially very limited, and of course investors and developers try to expand the room to move by, for example, going in more commercial areas with short-term leases and so on. So there is a development, and you need, of course, to look in detail at the limitations given by law. Yeah.
Great. It's interesting to pick up what's happening in Germany there. Mariya, you're especially looking to expand in Germany. Does that lead you to? Is that just because you thought it was a significant market and therefore didn't want to not be in Germany, or was it that you saw larger growth in more international students? Was it the sort of things that Samuel was picking up to a certain degree in terms of Germany?
Yeah, so we started in Lisbon, where we started operating, and then we moved to Spain and Italy. And Germany was, of course, for us a very good market, especially due to the fact that we have a lot of professional providers here in Germany, key accounts who actually professionally work, and that's very interesting to look at. And also, Germany is a very attractive destination for international students. So we have a bigger booking behavior or higher booking behavior in Germany, and also the conversion of international students that book and come, especially in Berlin. So this is where we started. So it's first the market dynamics of having the right key accounts here in Germany who operate not only in Germany but also in international other countries, and then having the international students looking and having the demand for student housing.
Okay, good.
And Andrew, you mentioned that this is specifically a management-intensive sector, right? So it means that the operation is very important. Mariya, do you also, as a Uniplaces, provide services, or do you anticipate on providing services to owners of real estate, maybe small portfolios that don't want to be involved in the management?
That's a very good question. So we're actually reviewing this currently. We know that we need to adapt a product better to the product market fits. That's why we're talking to a lot of key accounts, what their needs are, and we want to adapt to that. So we have operational headquarters in Lisbon, but also a German-speaking team. But we have local operating teams that actually support and work with our current key accounts.
Good. I wanted to pick up a couple of the investment things, and this is maybe initially for you, Andrew, and Samuel as well, which is lots of discussion on Brexit, what may or may not happen. Obviously, the UK, one of the biggest drivers initially of student housing. Is there any sense, Andrew, you're investing across the world in essence. Has it changed your strategy? And Samuel, have you seen anything that would lead you to believe that there may be a drop in terms of interest in the UK from international students, or is anybody picking up those kinds of things? Whoever wants to answer whichever aspects of that.
from the statistical point of view and the research we have done, then UK is already plateaued on a number of international students. And the variables that we see in the UK, like the net migration argument and all the restrictions, post-studying work rights, are not as competitive as it is in Germany, France, or Australia. So these are natural variables that actually drive or make the international students or their families to opt for other study destinations as well. Not like they would abandon the UK, but they consider, for example, Germany more than they were previously, because when they apply, they usually apply 5 to 10 universities at once, and they will see where they are applied to. So Germany is more part of the mix or in their application bulk, and so the number of international students is increasing, but not in the UK, and they go elsewhere. That's the point.
And has that had any effect on your strategy, Andrew, or not really?
I mean, I think it's fair to say all strategies constantly evolving, but one of the big effects of the Brexit vote was a huge swing in the value of sterling, which makes it makes the UK attractive to international investors, also more attractive to international students in terms of the value of their currency versus sterling. It's also fair to say that the UK has a number of very, very strong universities that were strong 100 years ago and will probably be strong in 100 years. So whilst it's something that we consider, the UK as a marketplace is still incredibly attractive to both domestic and international students. So yes, we evolve our strategy, but the UK is still definitely somewhere where we see investment opportunities.
If I may shortly add important piece of information, that in the UK the usage of private PBSA by domestically mobile students is much higher than in Europe, so it balances a little bit out the difference and lack of demand.
But do you also think that the university have a competitive edge as a result of those supply of student housing? Do you see that also working when they are recruiting students, or is that not necessarily an issue for universities if they don't have it?
Well, we haven't had the chance to make statistics across Europe, in entire Europe, so UK and Ireland and continental Europe in this regard. But from anecdotally research pieces, we can say that student housing is increasingly becoming a part of a package offer or value proposition to an international student. So it makes a difference whether there is student accommodation supply or not. We hear stories that 200 Chinese students were refused in Aachen because there were no places to house them.
I wanted to pick up a little bit just on that investment topic. Dirk, have you seen more? I mean, we saw from Samuel's slide the variety of investors who are now in this area. Are you seeing increased and different types of investor or capital coming in who are because you're obviously looking across the sectors? Are you seeing an increase in both the breadth and, I guess, the depth of capital looking at student housing and micro-living?
Yeah, so I think there is an increasing demand, of course, and there are various types of investors. So, which we currently see are foreign investors, mainly from UK or other foreign countries, which are already familiar with such asset class. And in the meantime, the typical German real estate investors, like pension funds and others, are investing as well. But they see it from our perspective more than a typical real estate investment, and not so much as an investment which you need to manage carefully.
And I mean, I'm interested to also get, I mean, you picked up there, Frank, about the operational side of it. I'm guessing, Rainer, in terms of Germany, then the operation is the same, so you don't run into operational difficulties in a sense. But what happens, is that going to keep you here in Germany, or are you going to take the micro-living concept beyond, out to, Vienna, let's say, or to Amsterdam, or to, are you going to take that further?
Well, Richard, Several elements. One is, if you take a look at the German market, things have evolved dramatically over the last 5 years. So 5-6 years ago, it was pretty much okay just to construct a piece of real estate, and within 3 weeks it was fully occupied. We see now the UK race for amenities is also coming to the continent. Young people are more mobile, becoming more selective on where they stay and what are they prepared to pay. That's one element. The other element is we are, besides Germany, as of today, in Portugal and in Spain, active. We're also looking into Italy and other more immature European markets, and each of these markets has its own, let's say, set of rules which reflect the status these markets are in. Yeah, so if you look into Portugal, for sure you have different regulatory environment which you need to accept to operate, but there is more a focus on sunshine and nice weather and beaches and being outside instead of having gyms and indoor pools and whatever you see as amenities in the US as standard as of today. Yeah, but I think in 5 or 10 years from now, Spain and Portugal will have also joined the race for these amenities. Yeah? And the more advanced you are on this cycle, the more sophisticated your operational concept needs to be able to cope with these different aspects, which is way more than having a building in proper shape and have the corridors cleaned on a daily basis. Yeah? And as said initially, here the borderline to hospitality becomes a meandering one.
Do your Spanish assets have catering?
That's a good question, Andrew. We are...
It's a yes or a no, right?
Yeah. We are, as of today, in Spain, in the middle of our conceptual phase, and the two elements are, is will we have catering or no? And will we have shared rooms? Yes or no? Yeah. And the fact that as of today you have situations in Spain, let's say in Seville, there's a beautiful 70s built hotel which has been transformed into student accommodation, where you have the opportunity to spend 6 months every night with a guy you've never seen before. You get a food offer which is somewhere between a corporate canteen and McDonald's, and they like to charge you 750 euros per month for this. Does that mean that this is the role model for this market, or would this market also be open for something different? I would tend to say the latter. Yeah.
I mean, our Spanish portfolio of the 4 operational assets, 3 have fully catered, 3 meals a day for all of the students, and one doesn't. And it's just a different type of student who looks for those two things. There is, we're not looking for one student who, there aren't 2 million students who are exactly the same. These guys around me probably know this a lot more than me, but that you need to have some variety.
But Richard, I mean, I'll take this moment to ask you also a question, because like if you compare this industry to residential or office, those were sectors that took forever to become international, right? Where all the players that you would have on a panel would focus on a particular market. What is your explanation that so quickly in the evolution of the industry, the brands and the investors go beyond their local markets? Have you picked up anything that could explain it?
I think one of the interesting things about that is there was a long discussion when we were talking about residential, about why it wasn't like multifamily in the US. Why wasn't it so straightforward? And the answer was because it isn't straightforward in a lot of those areas. But interestingly, I think student housing has developed in a way that can be recreated irrespective of where you are in Europe, because certainly if you're building on international students, the requirement for them to have something similar is not so dissimilar to the hotel sector rather than the PRS sector, I think, to a certain extent. And I think micro-living picks that up as well, is that what you're doing is creating a specific type of asset for a specific type of person, whether that's a guest or a tenant or how you want to talk about it. But that then allows you to create that, and I think it's very difficult to do that with residential as a whole. You've got different markets. Germany obviously has a very big rented sector. Holland has a big rented sector. The UK doesn't have, up until this point, really a proper PRS sector. It's trying to be built now. So I just think I think it's an extraordinary pace of movement from even 10 years ago, or from when I was a student, where you were in halls which were pretty much of a drabby kind of thing, and then you went automatically into a shared house, which was also pretty awful, and the toilets froze over during the winter and things like that, to this kind of area where actually you've been able to build something to suit what is required by the people who need that accommodation. I think it's created its own market, and it's done so in a very swift way, actually, I think.
Yeah, also the deal with Greystar as an operator in the Spanish market now for is it, Jorick, maybe you can elaborate on that. Do you see more groups becoming specialized operational brands and companies?
Well, I think one of the things we see is that also in Southern Europe, we see more and more, of course, international investors coming into these markets. Portugal being a very interesting one, where until a year ago, there were only very local operators, and now you have already 3 of our partners investing and building actually purpose-built student accommodation in Portugal, in Lisbon in particular. And I think it's also your question also relates to also their. This market is also becoming more hybrid in a way. And so when you talk about packaging, and you also see that a lot of these operators are also trying to push a model where they do student housing for 10 months, for example, and in the summer go for a short stay or an hotel function. So also the flexibility is one of the things that's key within all the markets that also certain operators are really looking for. Bridging also the small barriers, the diminishing barriers between short stay, hotel concepts, micro living and student housing. Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful presentation from all of you. Really appreciate your time. Co-living is fascinating. I think the evolution of the renter from being considered a tenant to a client to a guest absolutely feeds into the concept of co-living. For students to transition them from being graduates into employees, it makes perfect sense for that to be the product. But I suppose the twofold question is, number one, is it the obvious solution to the supply issues in housing in major cities? And secondly, what do you see as being the major obstacles to the sector as it marches towards the growth that we anticipate it fulfilling?
I'm not sure whether there is a one-fits-all solution to that question. As regards obstacles, it's pretty much depending on which market you're looking at. For Germany, I could list you 2 hours of obstacles now, starting from building regulation in 16 federal states through useless, bizarre car park requirements into municipal aspects in what are our priorities in our urban development and what are not these. In Germany, I think you have to take into consideration, make an example, take Frankfurt. In Frankfurt you have 60% single-person households, 80% households without kids. The number of rental offer below 50 square meter in Frankfurt is close to 10% of the rental market. So there is an increasing challenge in an environment of double-digit rental growth in the 6th consecutive year now for smaller units, which are not existing. So far so good. If you want to do a development of that type in Frankfurt, and I think Andrew, you have gone through this phase also several times, you still have a huge condo business, and for a condo developer, 75 square meters is the cheapest way of constructing a condo. So you still see that the offer is completely mismatching with what the market requires. If you go to other European cities, pretty much similar. All of them have been, let's say, overwhelmed by the re-urbanization trend, that young people who found families don't leave the cities anymore to the green outside to raise kids. they stay within the city, and they don't free up space for elderly people who want to go back to the city. And that leads to the fact that you have in most of the European relevant spots double-digit growth since many years now as regards the number of inhabitants. But if you take a look at what is brought to the market, it's A, quantitatively too low, and B, it does not match the requirement. And then the bottom line out of this is the relevant segment sees rental growth going on and on and on and on. And this is like a vicious circle we're in, yeah? And as said initially, I don't think that you will find a solution that fits to everyone everywhere. And you always have to take into consideration the local flavor, yeah? And looking from the outside into the London PRS market, to me this seems to be student accommodation for adults, yeah? Which is a strong trend, and there is a huge requirement also because of the fact that property buyers or the property ladder looks different than 10 years ago. So there's more demand for rent. And these factors, I think you need to analyze wherever you go to.
I'm from Lisbon City Council, and it's not really a question, it's more a contribution for the debate. We are running a program to build 6,000 units of affordable housing, on which you can have a segment for micro-living and student housing. So you can do investment on this in public land, you don't have to buy the land. So it's more like a call for you to consider this affordable rent program, and I'll be available also to discuss for those who are interested for this, and congratulate the organization for the topic.
You were saying from Lisbon, right? That matches great to our annual conference, 15th and 16th of November. I just have to use this opportunity to promote that. If you're interested in these kind of topics, Lisbon, 15th and 16th of November, the class conference, for sure.
Jorick, did you just organise that?
I'll comment on that.
Good. Look, we're pretty much at the end of the time, but I just want to kind of, as a wrap, just have one quick view from each of you on kind of what you see as the major trend, and because we wanted to focus a little bit on trends, but also on investment, where you see the most attractive investment opportunity, whether that's in micro-living, whether it's in student housing. Let's start with you, Samuel.
Well, I think that the student housing asset class has changed, and now there are two types of strategies. One is for big cities, so for volume, tier 1 cities, and over there are plenty opportunities for scale, as you could see on the slides. We see less tactical strategies for tier 2 cities, where the yield rates are higher, but risk is higher and work is harder over there, which was pretty common 5 years ago, and I think this will revive again in years to come, that as there will be sort of a lack of opportunities in big cities, then the smaller student cities like Aachen or Darmstadt will be also more on demand.
Great. Andrew?
So I would just say, if you're going to invest in student housing, it's real estate, so go for the best cities with the best universities, but make sure you've got the right operational partner, because it is operational real estate, and if you ignore that at your peril.
Right.
A good one. Yeah. I think I would say that not only focus on the building and a certain product, but look for the area and go for the hybrid models that include co-working, that include a certain kind of amenities, and see the investment on a bigger scale than only the object.
Yeah, so since we're in Germany, I'll talk about Germany and especially key accounts here in Germany. So I would really advise to remain flexible and also to enable shorter stays, because most of the Erasmus students and international students have an average stay of 6 months to 7 months. So be flexible on that, and you can generate great revenue with those furnished apartments. And please come when you are at the conference to our beautiful office in Lisbon. So it's at Rossio.
My advice would be, look at your kids and their behavior and try to match it with your behavior when you're that age. And if you have identified what the difference is, try to anticipate that into your investment decisions in that sector for the next 10 years, and you're on the right track.
Dirk.
It's real estate, so this location is very important, and I think it has to be managed. It's a complex investment, and I would look for, I think it's important, and that will be the drivers in the market, those companies who are able to operate and manage and to develop a proper brand in the market.